Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is episode 1 of my Manage Yourself, Lead Others web show, all about millennial leadership. I'm doing this as a bi-weekly kind of web show, podcast, what have you. So, these are just some things that I've noticed, and I want to share with you and with as many people as will listen to what I have to say. So let me give you a little bit of background about what I'm aiming for. So my name's Doug. I have, and I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I don't have, Fortune 500 company experience. I don't have, I haven't run a company that where I've had to oversee hundreds of people. My background is coffee. Episode 1 right now, brought to you by coffee. And shout outs to Three-Legged Dog, great little coffee shop in Jacksonville, Illinois, near Illinois College. If you find yourself down in kind of west central Illinois. But what I do have is experience from working in different industries as supervisor, as a manager, as a leader, and seeing things that have worked, as insofar as interacting with customers, interacting with my team, with my peers, with my leadership above me. So seeing what has worked and seeing what has not worked, I have a sense in what it takes to be a good leader of people. My sense is for a company where I've had to oversee 40, 50 bodies, it can work on a larger scale. It takes more work on a larger scale. It takes a lot more patience, a lot more thoughtfulness, and a lot more intentionality on your part. But taking what I have seen and what I'm going to teach you guys today and over the next several episodes, I hope that it helps you, and I suspect it will, bring some success in becoming a better leader, recognizing leadership, and kind of growing yourself and those around you. Today, and the first few episodes that we're going to be doing, I am focused mainly on millennial leadership. So something that came across my desk and through my email box when I was just perusing the web the other day, an interesting article from monster.com about common myths about millennials. So I know that I've seen these everywhere, and I'm sure that you guys have seen these too, where I open up the newspaper and I see millennials are killing this, or millennials are anti that. They're killing the napkin industry. They're killing brick and mortar stores. They're killing all these things, among other things. That's just what we are in our day-to-day lives, what we millennials, we horrible millennials are in our day-to-day lives. But this specific article is about business and why we are not fit or not suited for business. Now, it is an article that debunks these things, and that is my intention as well, being a millennial and being part of that generation. I don't believe these things, or at least I want to reframe the argument. So that is my aim and my intention here. So that's where we're going to get started. So the first one that was in that little article was millennials are entitled. Well, what does entitled mean? If you look up a simple dictionary definition, you find entitled as being inherently deserving of special privileges or treatments in a workplace specifically when it comes to this definition. So what does that mean in a business sense? What does an entitled millennial look like in a business sense? Well, according to a few surveys and according to some interviews with some boomers who are currently in these positions, it is millennials want to move up without paying their dues. That's the common analogy. That is the main criticism that I hear and I read from boomers. So let's look at it. Are millennials entitled. There was a recent survey within the last 5 years from the National Institutes of Health. And that did show that people in their 20s, currently people in their 20s, are 3 times more likely to have a narcissistic personality disorder than the baby boomer generation. The caveat to that is research had also shown that it's not a generational thing. Like, it's not as though millennials suddenly we are all narcissists. It is an age question. It's a question of age, and that same sort of pattern has shown, in 20-somethings over the last few generations. It is that, the way I see it, it is more of a go-getter attitude, more of a I am going to tackle the world attitude when you are ready to, enter the business world and you're ready to make it on your own. That's the way that I read into that. So on the flip side of that argument, when you ask millennials, this is another survey, when you ask millennials and baby boomers at what age should someone be financially independent, the age is almost the same. Between those two generations, the age is almost the same. It's within 2 years. Now, the problem is that how much money today indicates financial independence is different from what it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's just different. The value of the dollar has always and will always fluctuate. It will always change. So that kind of threshold right now, that threshold for financial independence, it is higher than it was for Gen X or the boomers. So for millennials, that means independence costs more money, right? So they're going to be more likely to be aiming at those higher paying jobs. They're going to try to do it sooner, generally speaking, than prior generations will. Because if the age of financial independence has not changed, but the price of financial independence has changed, you need more money sooner, right? That just stands to reason. Excuse me while I sip my coffee. So then let's look at really quickly what constitutes an entitled employee. Some common behaviors from, again, surveys, boomers, and all this is you would see someone that's blaming other people for when things start to go wrong. They'll take all the credit, but if something goes wrong, well, no, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. That was Joe Schmo over there. He did that. That's his fault. That's not my fault. Going rogue or acting outside the rules or outside of company policies or guidelines, often just to try to better themselves, to make their situation more palatable, to make their situation more beneficial to themselves. Seeking out special treatment or exceptions to company policies, company rules, deadlines, directives. That's another common occurrence or a common perception of an entitled employee. And for someone in management, that might look like I mentioned it sooner, accepting full success for your team's actions. When something goes right, accepting full success and not acknowledging the extent to which they were involved, not acknowledging their involvement at all. That's a common entitlement attitude. These behaviors, they're not unheard of. It's not like I'm trying to say that these don't exist in business. They exist. They absolutely exist. But why are they being pinned on millennials? I mean, you can look right now at the U.S. job force, and it kind of paints the picture for you. As recent as 2017, millennials are now the largest segment of workers in the U.S. labor force. And boomer employment has dropped 25 million since 1997. 25 million jobs since 1997. Since 2008, they've lost, 19 million. So from 97 to 2008, they lost 6 million. And since 2008, they have lost an additional 19 million jobs. Now, that's due to retirement. That's due to death. But the fact remains that these jobs need to be filled. And right now, millennials, they represent a larger workforce than Generation X ever did. Ever. Millennials represent the largest segment of population since boomers. And I believe, I didn't look this number up, but I do believe that millennials have overtaken boomers as far as just sheer volume of population. As far as when boomers were in their prime, when they were all, young and alive and all that. But millennials are the largest workforce currently. So when when the millennial workforce rises, that gives retiring employees a scapegoat. And I'm not trying to blame boomers. This happens all the time. It's not exclusive to millennials. Generation X went through the same thing. And so did the original me generation. Right? Who was the original me generation? The baby boomers. That's what they were called. And right now the millennials are called the me generation. But same sort of principle. But it happens generation after generation. It's not an exclusive millennial thing. So that leaves the truth. And what is the truth? Job positions are opening up. Right? Someone needs to fill those job positions. And in fact, millennials have an overwhelmingly high opinion of self-worth, so it stands to reason that they would be more likely to reach for these upper level positions. That's been ingrained in our brain since day one. Right? The idea and the question of self-esteem, of you can do anything you want. It's not a bad attitude to have. I believe that it's true. I do believe that we as people can do whatever we want. Whatever we set our minds to, wanting to do. Whatever we say, this is my goal, and I'm not going to stop until I hit that. We can all do that. It's not a fault. But having grown up in a generation where our parents have said, have put a huge focus on self-worth, self-esteem, and having that attitude, that kind of go-getter attitude, it only makes sense that millennials have a very high standard of self-worth. We have a very high opinion of ourselves. So we're going to reach for those jobs, right? We're going to reach for those upper-level jobs because we believe we can do that. And oftentimes we are right. We can do that. So all these things, and people still say, no, millennials are entitled. How do we avoid that? How do we avoid that stigma? How do we avoid that stereotype? My first recommendation is take an inventory of yourself. Be honest. Be honest about your skills. Be honest about the areas that, kind of your areas of opportunity. Be honest where your weaknesses are. I call them areas of opportunity. That's kind of interview talk. But be honest about where your weaknesses lie. If you know that, you know exactly what you need to be doing to strengthen yourself and to make yourself seem indispensable to your employers, right? I have found that this book, I'm going to pick it up right now. Give me just a moment. Don Clifton's Strength Finder. Great book. Great book. Go through this. It's a little assessment. And you can, I just noticed that it's backwards in my stream. Sorry about that, guys. Strength Finder, Don Clifton. But if you go through that book, you'll get to an assessment, and you can see where your strengths, specifically in business, but also in life, you can see where your strengths are and areas that you might need to be working on. Right now, the Enneagram, that's a huge popular thing. My wife's taken like 7 of them. She talked me into taking one the other day. For those that wonder and those that have taken it and want to know what I am, I've been categorized as a 1, a 6, and a 5. So I think it just kind of depends on my answers on any given day. So either a reformer, a loyalist, or an investigator. So I don't remember what my wife is. I think she's like a 4. After you've done all these things, find a mentor. Okay? Find someone that you trust. First of all, you have to trust them. Because if they're not going to give you information that is trustworthy, it's not going to help you in the long run, right? That seems like an obvious thing. But you have to find someone that is trustworthy. Find someone that has the experience that you're hoping to gain, right? And that is willing to teach you what they've learned. By learning from them, what you're saying is you're making yourself vulnerable, is what it is. And vulnerability is a complete opposite end of the spectrum as far as entitlement. Entitlement, you know everything. You're ready to do it. You don't need help. Vulnerability, you need help. You recognize that you need help and you're asking for it. So what else can you be doing? Involve your team. Involve your colleagues into situations, into decisions that you have to make. Right? Recognize the accomplishments of your team. First of all, recognize when they have done something. Always. It's very rare. I know for me, when I was working, I've been a restaurant manager. That's my big, first I was 10 years in various coffee shops, and then I was a restaurant manager. Hence, that's why I've got this gigantic mug of coffee that I keep sipping from right into the microphone. So excuse me real quick. But I rarely have come across a situation where my store has had a successful event or a sales, we've hit a sales goal where my team has not been directly involved. And if you don't recognize your team and you take that upon yourself, that's selfishness, that's entitlement, period. So recognize the accomplishments that your team has achieved. When your store accomplishes something, make sure that your team knows. I'm going to harp on this a lot, guys, because this is very important. So bear with me. But make sure that they know that you see them. You recognize what they have done. You appreciate their hard work. Call it out so the whole team can hear it. With success, call it out. Call out success loud, proud from the top of the mountain. On the other hand, when something doesn't work, you do not want to single out employees for misses, for missed opportunities, for failures, I guess, for lack of a better word, to put a really harsh term on it, for failures. Do not, in front of other employees, I want to be very clear. In front of other employees, do not single out another employee and make an example out of them. Don't do that. If someone has done something, you need to call them out on that. Do it privately. What I'm speaking of right now is in front of the entire store. Do not make an example out of somebody. That's pardon my French, that's piss poor. Don't do that. No one's going to want to work for you. You're not going to have trust of your peers and colleagues, and you're not going to have the trust of your leadership. If you throw people under the bus, you have lost all trust. Period. End of story. When there are misses, as a manager, as a leader, you have two options when something goes wrong. Selfish option, like I just said, throw someone under the bus. It was their fault. They did it. We failed because of them. The leader accepts responsibility unto yourself. Call it what it is. It's a miss. It's a failure. It's fine. It happens. We all experience failure at one point or another. Next time, just prepare harder. Prepare smarter. Just prepare better. That's all. But accept it. Accept that it happened and grow and learn. Learn from it. Ask advice from your colleagues, especially after a miss. Outside advice and critiques are essential to learning how to grow for yourself. And that shows a team attitude. When you're pulling in outside help, when you're asking, either a coworker, a peer, a colleague, or even your leadership, be vulnerable. Say, what did you see? How did you achieve success? And what do you think, what advice do you have for me moving forward? How can I help myself and how can I help my team? Show your team, show your colleagues that you are willing to find answers that you don't have. Don't presume to have all the answers. If what you've learned from a miss is that, well, I chose the wrong, I made the wrong decision, and next time I will just choose a different decision and I'll go with it myself. And you don't take an honest look at what happened to cause that failure, it's a circle. It comes right back. Next time, you might succeed, but what's the cost of it? If you haven't learned and you haven't been able to streamline your decisions and you haven't been able to make better decisions along the way, you might succeed, but it's gonna cost you a lot more. Whether it costs you in time, money, people, relationships, turnover, it's going to cost you something. If you don't learn from it, it's going to cost you something. By including people around you as opposed to alienating people, your value in the eyes of your employer, in the eyes of your company, your value rises. Whereas an entitled person might think that they ought to have something, what you have just shown is that you are willing to go out and earn your place and earn your position. Boom. You have broken that stereotype. It's as easy as that. It takes work. The steps, laying out the steps is easy, but it takes work. It's not going to be an easy process, but knowing what to do first, that's the easy part. Practicing it is what takes work. So in a leadership position, how do we recognize these behaviors, and what do we do with them? What do we do with them if we see someone that is, exhibiting these behaviors, that is perpetuating these myths? First, look at your team. Take an honest look at your team and recognize what might be considered overachievement in an employee, someone that might be outworking their responsibilities. Make sure they're not overstepping their bounds. An employee that wants to move up will often approach you first, or will just try to, go do that above and beyond. But above and beyond is great, but it hurts if you're stepping on the toes of other employees. If that employee is stepping on the toes of other employees or stepping on your toes, that damages morale, that damages kind of the chain of command, the sense of responsibility, and soon people might turn to them. If your employees see this guy working above you, your employees are going to turn to them and not to you. So recognize if someone is kind of working above their pay grade, as a common phrase, and talk to them. Sit them down, talk to them. It's not a bad thing. I'm not trying to say call them out, but just talk to them and see what their motivation is. Are they looking to grow? Do they see a hole that they think needs to be filled? You can learn a lot by just sitting someone down and talking to them. That's going to be a common thread in this entire series, communication. If they're looking to grow, offer mentorship. I mentioned earlier, to find yourself a mentor to help you grow, to teach you things. Offer a mentorship to them, to your employee, to the guy or girl that's working above their position. Offer to be a mentor. Share your experiences. If they want to be in your position, you're there. You can tell them what you've gone through, what people look for. Excuse me. Coffee's getting to me. Involve them in higher level tasks. Give them higher level responsibilities. Kind of mold them into the position that they want. You've heard of dress for the position that you want, not the position you have. Same concept. As a leader of someone, give them responsibilities that help them grow into the position that they are looking to get into. Because at the end of the day, developing employees reflects well on your ability as a leader. And it reflects even better if they are successful after they have left your store. That's how you fight entitlement. Vulnerability, communication. Help yourself grow. Help your team grow. Right? Now, that's just one of the myths of millennials. The next one, I'm sure everyone's heard this. Millennials want a trophy just for showing up. That old participation trophy thing. I have opinions on participation trophies outside of business, but as far as the attitude of millennials only show up for work because they want praise. It's like a "what have you done for me lately" attitude. Another kind of common tie and common thread into this myth, into this perception. Kind of separating out the haves and the have-nots, right? Boomers believe that millennials see themselves as indispensable just because they exist, because they are people. Or that millennials need praise and affirmation, or they just kind of shrivel up into a little ball. Or millennials are attention hungry. I've heard all these things. I've heard them all. They're all very harsh criticisms, right? I mentioned before, and I'm going to say this again and again and again and again. If you learn one thing from this series, one thing from this podcast, one thing from what I want to teach you guys, it's that communication is key. Communication is critical. Participation by employees, and especially by millennials right now, because as I said, they are the ones that are coming up higher in the workforce, so they're the ones that are under the most scrutiny. Participation can be read as a need for attention. Like the kid that sits in the front of the class, that wants to gain as much information as they can, that wants to be as close to the front of the class, close to the board. They want to hear everything. They don't want to be in back where things, they might get lost and you're hearing some whispers, of the class. They want to be up at the front. That can be seen and misread as a need or a want for attention. Especially if they stand out, especially if they're doing a good job. Oh, why are they working that way? They just want someone to notice them. That's the attitude. That's a perception, anyway. And to an extent, maybe we do want to be noticed. Maybe we do. At the very least, we want to be communicated with. There's a couple studies that paint a really interesting picture here. First, from in Alaska, the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation. They had a survey last year, I believe it was. It was either I'm sorry, this is 2019. It was 2016. I'm having trouble with my dates right now. But in a workplace survey, it revealed that 71% of millennials are frustrated by poor communication in the workplace. I'm going to pair that with a Gallup poll that indicates that employees felt that when employees felt that their manager was open and approachable and communicated well, they felt more actively engaged in the workplace. That survey was, if it was like a strongly agree to a strongly disagree, kind of 5 levels of, how do you rate this statement? And if they rated their leadership, their manager, their supervisor as that they strongly agree that they're open, approachable, and communicate well, 55% felt engaged in their job versus someone that felt completely disengaged or just kind of, like they were showing up. But 55%, an overwhelming majority, felt engaged in the workplace, engaged in their job, engaged with their leadership, engaged with their employees, with their coworkers, with their peers. Engaged employees are far more likely to be top performers. They miss fewer days of work, and they have lower turnover rates. These are the people that you want, right? Right? I worked once in a position where it's unheard of, and you're going to think I'm lying, but I promise you I'm not. I have no reason to lie. Between January in December. 0% turnover. Zero. Nothing. No one left. I didn't need to hire anybody. We had no turnover. Almost impossible. Almost impossible. I'm going to say it was difficult. But it takes engagement. It takes communication. Right? It takes recognizing when people are unhappy and talking with them. Just talk to somebody. Talk. Right? Talk to somebody. As a workplace millennial, myself, it's up to us. It's up to me to open the lines of communication. If you feel that the lines of communication are not there and you want it, especially from your leadership, it's up to you to open up the line. Be open with your supervisors. Ask for regular performance feedback. Request a regularly scheduled meeting, preferably face-to-face. If you can only do over the phone, it really depends on your position. You know, if you're working in a store where it's, 20 employees and your manager's there 5 days a week, you can do a face-to-face. You can do a once a week face-to-face, a once every 2 weeks face-to-face. That's pretty simple. As you get higher, you're in a leadership position and you have to report to a district manager or a regional manager. They've got stores, in other cities and in other states that they have to look over. That's when, you might have to do a phone call. Regardless, schedule a meeting. Schedule it. Write it in your calendar. Send an email. First call, then send an email that kind of syncs to your calendar. If you haven't synced your Google Calendar to your phone or your whatever it is, to your iPhone, I use Android almost exclusively just because that's what I used. I just never used an iPhone. If you haven't synced your calendar to your phone, you're doing it wrong. But talk to your supervisor, schedule it, then send an email to sync it to your phone so that there's no secrets, there's no surprises, there's no forgetting. Ask to discuss your performance to ensure you're meeting their expectations. Put it on them. Frame it in a way that you want to know if you are working in a way that suits the business and is acceptable to your leadership, rather than framing it in a way of, well, is this helpful to me? Right? Because at the end of the day, if it's helpful for business, if it's helping your store grow, if you're successful at the store, it's helpful for you. If you frame it in a way that, and be honest about it. I'm not telling you to lie and say, this is for the store. I just want to make sure the store's. Be honest about it. If you don't care about your store, you don't deserve to be there in the first place. Right? Like that should be pretty cut and dry. But if you're focused on what will help the store, what will help your team, what will help your employees, it will help you in the long run. Okay? Be ready and willing to review yourself, and review yourself honestly. We kind of talked about it before. Do the strengths finder. Find out what you're good at. Find out what you're not good at. Be honest about it. Someone's going to see something. You're often your harshest critic. So if you see something and someone says, I don't see that in you, that's great. Perfect. Great. But someone's going to see something, and you need to be prepared to hear it. Someone's going to say, you're a terrible communicator, and you need to be ready to hear it. Someone's going to say, you are unapproachable, and you need to be ready to hear that. I've heard both of those things. I've heard that I don't communicate well, and my employees think I'm unapproachable. I go into work with, I try every day to go into work with a smile on my face, and I'm the guy that while I'm working, I'm doing whatever I need to be doing. I'm kind of humming a song to myself. I'm singing. But there was something about the way I was carrying myself that my team felt I was unapproachable. How did I fix it? I talked to them. I said, hey guys, I'm on your side. I want to help. But I understand that you guys are, you can't talk to me. You don't know how to talk to me. And we set meetings. Sometimes you have to do that downwards. You have to do that with your employees. Talk to them. Let them get to know you. Not everyone's going to be, ready and willing to come up to you and say, hey, try to learn about yourself and where you come from and your line of work and your business. But if you go to them, you have opened up those lines of communication. And the most important thing is you're demonstrating a willingness to learn, to grow. You're demonstrating an understanding that your success is earned and not just handed to you. Right? It goes back to the entitlement. Entitlement and participation trophy, kind of merge together, but have a different sort of connotation to it. But it all stems back to communication and an openness and a willingness to learn and to grow and to better yourself. As a leader, going back and talking to your employees, as a leader, communication is mandatory. It's not just important, it is mandatory. You must communicate. You have to. Which is why it hurt when someone said that, when I, in a review, I was told that I wasn't a good communicator. And it was the way I was approaching situations. That's what I discovered. It was the way that I approached employees. I don't sugarcoat. I don't call employees out in front of other employees. But if something needs to be addressed, I don't sugarcoat it. And there were some employees that thought that I was too harsh. I take that as a fair criticism. So I changed. When I talked to them, I approached it in a different method, a different manner of speaking. Right? If you struggle with communication, like I did, I highly recommend investing in some time with your employees. And I have something, I highly recommend, to be honest, investing some time with me. And I will discuss something about that at the end of this broadcast. So wait till the end, and I'm going to talk about, something that I can do to help, because I want to help. I want to help you communicate. For your team, you need to set the standard. Right? If you expect communication, you need to communicate. Don't make them come to you, because they won't. I had to hear from my manager and my district manager that my employees thought I was a bad communicator. They won't come to you. Especially if they think you're a bad communicator, they're often scared. They don't know how to approach it. They won't come to you. You have to open up those lines. Set aside time to talk to them. Whether it's individually or as a group, it depends on your situation. If it's one person you're having trouble with, do it individually. If it seems to be a common theme in the store, do it as a group. 5 minutes. Easy as that. 5 minutes. Do something as simple as something that I like to ask people was, because I worked with a lot of high schoolers. So I would ask them, what did you learn today? It kept them on their toes. Because then they knew that I was going to be asking them. Then, they would pay attention in school. So that's a kind of a sneaky way of me being like, hey, you guys need to pay attention. But ask them something like that. Favorite animal? What'd you do this weekend? 5 minutes. Set it aside. Talk to somebody. Schedule's important. You set a schedule for your team and you expect them to come in, right? And without that schedule, are your employees going to come into work? No. Schedule's important. So if communication is important to you, schedule communication. Set a time and then stick to it. If you don't follow through, you have just weakened your ability to communicate. It shows a lack of care for your team and it lowers engagement. Follow through. if you say something, you better damn well mean it. If you say you're going to do something, follow through. Because if you don't, you've lost the trust of your team. You've lost it. It's gone. Be the communication that you want to see from your leadership. And then be the communication that you want to see from your employees. If you think that it's important for employees to interact and communicate with each other, you have to be the example. One of my bosses said something about a bar of effort, and we'll talk more about the bar of effort in a later episode. But the bar of effort is basically, if you're working here, no one's going to come any higher than this. 1% of people might. 99% of your employees will be right here or lower. Set the bar. Employees that want higher positions, that aspire for more, will require more direct communication. So set that up with them. Schedule it. Be honest but be fair. Don't let them go on thinking that they are the greatest thing to come out of that store. They can do no wrong. But don't let them think that they are garbage. These things shouldn't be shouldn't be, what's the word? They shouldn't be outlandish thoughts. Don't let your employees think that they're garbage, but don't let them think that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. If they're not. If they are, I mean, great. Kudos to you for A, finding them, B, training them, and C, developing them, and then sending them off to learn and to grow. Your goal is to foster their growth, not beat down the team. Now, constructive criticism that will foster growth. You will help your team grow. But you have to be responsible about it. Right? Set expectations, establish goals, but then work with your team to help meet those goals. If they're not met, some of that is still your responsibility, but discuss with them. Discuss with the ones that are, working to achieve more. Discuss with them why it didn't work. Help them understand so that they can avoid that later later on down the line. That's the biggest thing. Communication, guys. Communication. Learn how to use it. And learn how to use it at your advantage. Communication should be face-to-face or over the phone. It shouldn't be text message. Don't do it. People don't, you read a text. I know when I read a text, I find it difficult to say to myself, is this, are they being serious? Are they serious about what they're saying? Is this sarcasm? Is this, are they upset? Are they happy? Are they whatever? You can't read into it. Talk to someone over the phone or meet face to face. Don't do a text message. And that's the next and final myth, I guess, I want to address, is that millennials are easily sidetracked by technology. I mean, we've all got this. All of us. We've all got a phone in our pockets. Sometimes there are things that come up, and I don't necessarily want to debunk this. I don't think that we're not sidetracked by technology, but what I do want to do is I want to clarify and refocus. Because I think that this myth is, I do believe it's a misconception, but I do believe that it's something that even with the misconception, we can turn this around into a positive. And that's what I want to do. I want to turn this into a positive. Like I said, my phone is always on me. Always. Even when I'm sleeping. I've got my phone plugged in right next to me. And there's times when I wake up, middle of the night, I open up the phone and I'm writing notes to myself, or I'm texting myself so that I don't forget a thought that I had in the middle of the night. And if you ask my wife, she can attest to this. She'll wake up and she'll be like, what are you doing? It's 2 a.m. Why are you on your phone? And then she gets mad that I woke her up. The fact is that we grew up during a technological explosion, right? We've seen TVs get smaller. We've seen computers get smaller and then larger, but we've seen computers become more powerful. Phones have become supercomputers, right? And businesses do all they can to incorporate all these things. They're trying to use all of it. In school, I remember being told, you're not going to grow up and have a calculator when you need to solve a problem. You're right. I've got something that's much better. I've got a supercomputer in my pocket. It's much more powerful, much more comprehensive than a calculator. And if I click, 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 I've got a calculator. So I have that too. What you need to remember, and my inner nerd's going to come out, as old Uncle Ben once said, with great power comes great responsibility. Right? Okay, Spider-Man, go ahead. Technology's never been more important to a generation or to business as it is today. Never. It's important to use that technology responsibly. Right? Otherwise, it's just being sidetracked. And it's not utilizing the tools that you have at your hands. Pulling out your phone in the middle of a shift is not responsible usage, of technology. The temptation's always there. Don't do it. Your manager's going to walk in. Your district manager's going to walk in. Your employees are going to see that. And then they think, oh, that's okay. So during the middle of work, what are they doing? They're sitting on... That's what they're doing. Are they paying attention to customers? No. Are they paying attention to tasks? No. So the stereotype just keeps going. Right? What you can do, and this is what I recommend, I highly recommend it, because technology and information and news is out there instantaneously. Find resources that you can use. There's tons of them out there. And then you just have to learn how and when to use them. One of them is Twitter. Hugely powerful resource. You want some news, go on Twitter and find your favorite, your favorite business or your favorite news source, and you've got anything that you want to know. Anything. For me, aside from doing all this, doing leadership coaching and business coaching, huge nerd. My Twitter is flooded with video game news, electronics news, computers. I build computers for a living. Not for a living, as a hobby. For a living, I do all kinds of other stuff. But as a hobby, I build computers. I'd love to do it for a living. That'd be great. If you want a computer, if you want me to help you build a computer, you know where to reach me. But that's what my timeline is filled with. Learn how to use Twitter. Follow as many news resources as you can. Know your business and follow competitor companies. Follow your own company. Follow CEOs of your company and competitor companies. Learn their mindsets. Learn what those companies are doing, how they're growing, and how they're evolving. Use that tech to your advantage. Stay on top of the world. Stay on top of corporate news. This is a responsible and skilled usage of your media, of your technology. Prepare for changes in business as they happen. And how else are you going to do that? What's the easiest way to do that? Is to know exactly what is happening when it happens. Twitter's great for that. That's just one tool. YouTube, as it started out and it was just kind of funny videos by college kids that made me laugh as a high schooler. YouTube has become an invaluable learning tool. Invaluable. Previous generations, they haven't had the luxury or the privilege of having a near infinite encyclopedia at their fingertips. We have that. A lot of the skills and knowledge that previous generation has, they were taught by mentors, teachers, parents, right? Peers, friends. If those people didn't have that knowledge, it took a lot of effort to go out and learn how to do something. And me, my parents didn't do that. That's not a knock on them. It just didn't need to happen. I could, by the time I was of the age where I needed to learn how to do things, I had this resource at my disposal. I have learned just through YouTube how to change my brakes in my car. I've improved my golf swing. I've learned how to cook for my wife. My wife works crazy restaurant hours, and sometimes she comes home, doesn't feel like cooking. I've learned how to cook so that she can have a nice hot meal when she comes home. I've learned, as I mentioned, how to build a PC, and I've done it half a dozen times, and it's great. And I'm still working on the one that's currently helping me broadcast to all of you fine folks. I've learned how to live stream on, a broadcast. All of this I've learned from YouTube. If I don't know how to, I needed to solder something the other day. I didn't know how to solder. I didn't have to learn it. I didn't take shop in high school, but I went on YouTube and I learned how to do it. We can do that now. We can do that. So if you are having a problem at work and it seems unanswerable, the odds are you can find someone that has gone through that can share their experience, right? It's possible YouTube will have a video on it. YouTube can teach you what to do. It's not a be-all, end-all resource. You should still try to find that one-on-one, that personal touch, find a mentor that can teach you things. But if they don't know, you're not stuck. That's the point. You can use YouTube as a supplement. You can use Reddit. I'd be a little bit more careful with Reddit. It is the internet after all. To some extent, Wikipedia or people will create their own wikis, that'll help with certain topics and to help you gain certain knowledge. Again, be a little careful, be more judicious. You have to learn how to pick the ripe fruit out of the rotten fruit. But these are some of the resources that we have at our disposal. This is what technology has afforded us. Use it to your advantage. Learn and grow. Learn from these things. Learn from people that have come before you. And if you can't find someone that can teach it to you face-to-face, learn from the best resource that you can find. If it's YouTube, great. If it's Reddit, okay. Learn. Use it to learn. Because what you have just become is that mentor or that encyclopedia that can teach someone face-to-face. Right? You've developed that human interaction. You can use that now. Encourage your team to do the same thing. Keep guidelines. Keep your company guidelines in place. Don't let them pull out their phones and, as soon as there's something that they perceive as a problem, don't let them pull out their phones and start searching the internet for an answer. That's not responsible. But encourage them to go out and find answers. Or you yourself, if you have the answer, teach them. Set the example. Communicate the rules and expectations and stick to them. But set the example that you are willing to go out and learn something new if you don't have that knowledge. The thread that remains between these myths, these millennial myths. Effective communication among your peers, effective communication with your supervisors, towards your team, is essential to debunking these myths or redefining these myths, refocusing what people see in a millennial, in anybody, really. Because in a few years, we're going to be saying the same thing about Generation Z or the generation that comes after. So be ready, guys, because soon we're going to be the old curmudgeons that are saying, oh, this generation, they don't know nothing. Well, what have you done to teach them? What have you done to teach them something? If they don't know nothing, that's your fault. That's my fault. We haven't taught them. I've got 2 kids right now, and you better believe that anything that I am learning right now, anything that I'm teaching, is going to go through them as well. Because if they leave and they go off into the big open world and I haven't instilled that knowledge in them, shame on me. Shame on me. That communication is going to be one of many essential skills, but a central skill that I discuss in this web show and on my other platforms. So, I hope you're ready to talk about communication, because it's going to come up again. I really want to thank everybody for coming along, for watching, for hopefully sharing this. I'm going to rebroadcast this on, I am streaming this live on both YouTube and Twitch. So if you're watching on one of those 2 platforms, it is on the other platform as well. I can and I will redistribute this on YouTube so that it's ready to be watched at your leisure. But I want to thank you for watching and sharing and participating. As I mentioned at the top, this is a bi-weekly show. So I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. That's going to be the next show. 2 weeks from today. That's the 20th. That's going to be March. Woo! It's going to be March already, guys. March 2nd, I believe. So I'll see you back at that time. So how can you help support future episodes? Well, I've got, like I said, I've got Twitch and YouTube. YouTube is manage yourself, lead others. On Twitch, it is twitch.tv/manage yourself _lead others, all one word. You can find me on Twitter, the aforementioned Twitter, at DK_Milo, MYLO, as in manage yourself, lead others. That's how you can find me on Twitter. I do have a Patreon page. So if you would like to support in that way, that would be great. I will add that link to each of the chats, and I will put it in the descriptions of the rebroadcasted YouTube video, so that you guys can find that really easily. If you would like to support me there, that would be wonderful. That will help bring new episodes every couple of weeks, and with enough support, I can and will make this a weekly show. It will take some support, because I need to be able to support the family. But if you guys want to, great. If you want to keep this coming, if you want to keep learning, that's how you can help me and help this channel. You can also visit and subscribe to my personal blog. And that's an easy one. Manage yourself-lead others. One word, manageyourself-leadothers.com. And I can post that link in the chat and in the description of the YouTube video, so that everyone can find that as well. Make it real easy on everybody. So once again, in closing, I want to thank everybody for joining me. I hope you'll join me again in 2 weeks when we rebroadcast. And guys, it's been a pleasure, and it will continue to be a pleasure. So until then, be good. I'm out.